Hello and welcome to another Pauper gameplay video by Ready Made Gaming. Today we have a matchup between Mono Black Control, or Devotion, and Boros Valuetown, otherwise known as Boros Piles. This is a brief explanation of what the deck contains and what the cards do. You generally want to play red and white lands, as well as a pile of burn spells and cards that generate tokens or facilitate generating value. On Joe's side, he's on Mono Black Control. They play Swamps and Swamps. They play a number of kill spells, some number of discard spells in the 75, and some Garys to finish off their opponent. The opening hand for me, I will be on the play in game 1, is Seeker of the Way, Prophetic Prism, Boros Garrison, Secluded Step, Omen of the Sun, Omen of the Forge, and Core Skyfisher, with a Seeker of the Way going to the bottom for my mulligan. Joe will be on the draw with a Victim of Night, Echoing Decay, Grey Merchant of Asphodel, 2 Swamps, Bazooka Bog, and a Witch's Cottage, which he will mulligan to the bottom. And draw one for his turn, apparently. My first turn, I will lead on a Secluded Step. Joe will play Witch's Cottage. I will play a Boros Garrison, bouncing the Secluded Step back to my hand. Joe will play a Swamp. And I will play a Prophetic Prism to begin my third turn. And I will lay a Kabiri Crossroads. So one of the things about these decks is they're both value grindy, sort of controlling decks. Joe for his third turn will lay a Swamp and a Phyrexian Rager. Joe's deck the Mono Black Control deck is very good at leveraging its life total to gain card advantage through Sign in Blood, Phyrexian Rager. So, and you can also gain all that life back with a Grey Merchant in the mid to late game. So for the third turn here, I will lay a Prophetic Prism. I'm sorry, I will cast a Glinthawk, which allows me to return the Prophetic Prism to my hand. I will then cast a Prophetic Prism, drawing a card, laying a second Boros Garrison, and bouncing a Kabiri Crossroads. It's debatable whether or not I wanted to trade here, but generally I think if the game goes very late, it would favor me most of the time, and his deck has more kill spells than mine, so I would rather trade off creatures while I have the opportunity. I'll lay an Omen of the Forge here to destroy the second Phyrexian Rager. Now it's functionally a clear board. I'll lay a Core Skyfisher to bounce my Omen of the Forge back to my hand, then play Kabiri Crossroads, gaining some more life. Joe will lay a fifth land. It's another Swamp. It's all Swamps, Witches, Cottages, and Bazooka Bogs in this deck for the Mono Black on the Mono Black Control side. It is truly Mono Black. So sometimes the sequencing is a little rough with this deck. The Boros Pile, Valuetown, Life Gain, whatever. I go to 26 or 28 life here with the Kabiri Crossroads. And I think about running out Omen of the Sun and then using Core Skyfisher to bounce it so I can replay it again next turn, overloading with tokens, but that's generally not what I want to do here. So I will play the Skyfisher to bounce the Prophetic Prism, and on Joe's turn he plays an Edict effect, to which I respond with the Omen of the Sun, which makes 2 1/1 tokens when it enters the battlefield, so I can sacrifice one of them. Joe responds by defiling my Core Skyfisher, functionally keeping the board clear continuously. Both of us are really just trying to get the most value out of each one of our cards so that we just literally have more material at the end of the game. A lot of times that's what it comes down to. Joe will play another Witch's Cottage. This time its ability gets to trigger, putting a Phyrexian Rager back on top of his deck. I will go to 29 and attack Joe down to 15, laying a Windscarred Crag and attacking him with my token. I'll lay the Prophetic Prism again to draw another card and pass. There's a lot of return this permanent or that permanent from your hand to the battlefield in this deck. That's where you extract a lot of your value from your Glinthawks and your Core Skyfishers, from Prophetic Prisms and the Omens, which aren't standard across the board, but I like them a lot. I will flash in an Omen and take down a Phyrexian Ranger again. And one of the nice things, once you are out of bounce spells, you can sacrifice the Omens in your upkeep, or at any time, but I usually try to position it either for the end step or for my upkeep to have some impact on improving my draw step. So here you'll see I have a Prophetic Prism and a Journey to Nowhere. Looks like I can put the Journey on top. You just kind of want to overload on kill spells, I think. There's another Prophetic Prism. I may put the Journey at the bottom to get the Prophetic Prism to just, turbo through the deck a little bit more. There's a Windscarred Crag. Unfortunately, I only have 2 mana up, so I won't be able to end step sacrifice the Omen again. I'll go to 30. Joe's going to consider conceding here. 30 life sounds like a lot, but and that's what he is considering conceding off the basis of his opponent being at 30 and him being at 15. But Joe will lay his 7th land, and he'll play a Thorn of the Black Rose. That gives him the Monarch. And if you've ever played a grindy, mid-range, control, slopped-up board stall type of game, the person who is the Monarch is at a distinct advantage. Now we're looking for a token. We thought we had one somewhere in our pile of things over there, but we don't. So in his end step, Joe will draw. If I could have sacrificed the Omen in the end step of that turn, I probably would have been in a position going into my turn with a full 7 mana on board, maybe 8, to really grind my way through things. Maybe then I leave the Thraben Inspector on the battlefield just to make another body. Sacrifice the clue, draw a card, still have 5 mana to work with whatever my draw step is. If it's a kill spell, I can kill the Thorn, get through, maybe steal the Monarch back with the token. But literally being 1 mana short is what happened there. So I will G-Blast down the Thorn. Joe retains the Monarch through my attack because he casts another Edict. I actually think if that was Joe's plan, he should have used his Edict in his end step last turn, because that prevents me from having another Omen of the Sun to punish him. Which, once you see 1, you may as well assume that there's, 2 or 3. Maybe just 1, but if you can play around it for free, then I would recommend doing so. So here's the Thraben Inspector, a turn later. Immediately sacrificing the clue so quickly it does not even appear on the battlefield. I'll go up to some number of life points that don't matter. Joe plays another Thorn, and Oubliette's my threat. And this is really the advantage you can leverage with the Monarch. If your deck is just kill spells and you are fighting against a creature deck, they're largely going to be powerless to prevent you from retaining the Monarchy. Joe will go into his turn, 7 mana, a Chittering Rat's really slowing me down. Yeah, I'll concede there. That at that point, oh wow, and he has a second Chittering Rats. Talk about the Rubbins. And multiple Garys. Yeah, this game was, and this is a game that he was very sure that he could never win. That's the power of the Monarch. So the sideboard is pretty simple here. I have nothing to bring in or out. Joe is dropping 4 Edicts because I'm a token deck, for 4 Choking Sands because I have 4 copies of Boros Garrison. I'll be on the play. I start with a Thraben Inspector, Prismatic Strands, Galvanic Blast, Core Skyfisher, Great Furnace, Windscarred Crag, and a Palace Sentinel. Joe on the draw has 3 Swamps, a Defile, Phyrexian Ranger, Witches of... I don't know how to say that name. And Thorn of the Black Rose. It's the black from Arabian Nights. Tap, deal damage to something, and then that something's controller or, gets to deal damage to whatever they want. So I will lead on a Windscarred Crag tapped, going to 21. Joe leads on Swamp. My second turn is Great Furnace as a land. Run out a Thraben Inspector, make a clue. End of turn. End of Joe's second turn, he's going to play... during Joe's second turn, he's going to play Witches. As his end step, I will bolt it. I will play a second Great Furnace as my 3rd land for the turn. Attack for 1. Main phase 2. Play a Core Skyfisher to return the Thraben Inspector to my hand. Now we're able to fight a little bit in the air, as well as have a use for all of our mana. There's a Galvanic Blast. It's 2 more damage. That's 2 damage to that Phyrexian Ranger. Just keeping the battlefield clear. Now, even without a land drop, I can sacrifice the Clue and replay the Thraben Inspector. So we'll take for a land here. We would take a Boros Garrison for sure. There's that Thraben Inspector. Get our Clue again. And crack in for 2. If Joe can't answer this Skyfisher, we're actually not in a terrible spot. Oh, there's an answer to the Skyfisher. It's very possible that I should have brought in some number of removal spells for enchantments. I believe there's Leave No Trace in my board, which could destroy multiple oubliettes. So we'll run back the last turn and sacrifice the Clue to start things off, try to get a second land. There's a Faithless Looting. Oh, there we go. And I've actually considered adding a second looting because so frequently this deck either gets flooded or screwed on mana. I can't seem to find a balance that avoids both. I think I'm at like 25-ish lands now. So I'll lay an Ancient Den as my land for the turn, crack in for 1 with a Thraben Inspector. The cards I discarded were a Galvanic Blast, which is terrifying in a matchup that's all about creature and battlefield presence, and a Prismatic Strands, which is cool because that card has flashback. So Joe will get to play one of my favorite cards in the mono black control deck, Sign in Blood. He will target himself, deal himself 2 damage, draw 2 cards, play a Witch's Cottage, put the witches from his graveyard back onto the top of his deck. That's interesting flavor there. I like that. And now I am the Monarch with 2 threats on the battlefield. It's probably safe for me to attack here, but if there's an end-step kill spell, targeted kill spell, it's probably going after... Okay, there we go. It's going after both of them, and that's fine. But to my point, if there's an end-step kill spell, I don't know that there's a hasty threat or anything to that effect, but when I end up, getting the crown, wearing the crown as it were, I tend to play ultra conservative. Unless I'm against burn, I'm still swinging if it's against burn. But in a matchup that can be so dominated by who has the Monarch, I just want to play super tight. So I'll draw for turn. Did not miss a land drop. Excellent. I'll play a Boros Garrison, and I will place a Journey to Nowhere on the stack and use it to exile the witches. We're just playing the same game that Joe played last turn. Ooh, now he steals back the Monarch. Yeah, this is neat. This is good flavor. We're fighting over who wears the crown, otherwise known as the Batman sleeve. Bolt the bird, I guess? That's not really a bird. Bolt the thorn? I don't know. Kill the thing on the battlefield, make it dead. Oh my goodness. This is excellent. This is, I am the Monarch, you are the Monarch, I am the Monarch. There's a Thraben Inspector. Battlefield's turning into that slopped up board stall we're talking about before. There's another Boros Garrison. I really do enjoy Boros Garrison as a magic card, and for the record, a lot of the bounce lands. But Boros Garrison in this deck is especially good. It allows you to functionally never miss a land drop, but it is very soft to people hitting it with Choking Sands. And there's a Chittering Rat. So the battlefield's starting to get a little... It's interesting. He added a permanent. I took a permanent away from me. And hitting a Boros Garrison, that is no joke. If he could have produced a second Choking Sands that turn, it would have been an interesting game. He's taking 3 a turn. He's on a 5-turn clock, something like that. Just to see how it would go. But I really think this matchup in general just comes down to who controls the Monarch. Who is the Monarch? There's an Omen of the Forge. Kill your dude. I can probably afford to attack with both of my creatures here, to be honest. Even without the core Skyfisher, I should probably be trying to get this game over. The situation is a little bit different because my opponent's completely tapped out. So I'm not as much risk of an end step kill spell disrupting my board, especially with the core Skyfisher. And core Skyfisher bouncing a kill spell that can improve my draws while I'm drawing to a turn is that's a lot of things to say about a thing. There's a Phyrexian Rager. There's a Sign in Blood. Well, he's bolting himself here. And it's important to stay up on card advantage, but if your life total hits 0, it doesn't particularly matter how many cards you have in your hand. But we can only play the cards we're dealt, so I don't think he's at fault here. I don't think it's a misplay. I just think you got to play the cards you're dealt sometimes. And there's the block. Yeah, that was a very decisive chump block. It seemed like he decided to do that before I took my turn, which is interesting. I'd like to do I'll probably rewatch this game and think a little bit more about that chump block. That tells me that there's a plan. And if the plan was to have 2 kill spells going into your next turn, then the chump block doesn't look good. To have 3 kill spells, holy shoot! So he could have taken back the Monarch here. In fact, what he could have done is declared an attack with the... Oh, yes. The Omen of the Forge still would have gotten him. Well played, Joe. He's definitely playing for a long game here, but I would not recommend playing against the Monarch in a protracted game. There's a Radiant Fountain. I'll gain more life. My life total still does not matter at all. There's another Thraben Inspector. Makes a bit of material there and a clue token. Get a clue, will you? I will, thanks. We're thinking about how we can close this out quickly here. There's an egg. Draw a card. So that insulates our life total even further, which I'll just go to the end step after cracking in for 1 and draw a card with the Monarch. Wow, there's a Gary. Gary off the top. What are we at? He goes back up to 7. Drops me down to 16. It may... trying to think of a sequence that would make it so that at the end step I would want to either crack a clue or the egg. I probably should have done one or the other. I think the only wrong answer was doing nothing. So it looks like I have a Battle Screech in my hand. That's a 4-mana sorcery. It says generate 2 1/1 flying bird tokens, and then you can flash it back by tapping 3 white creatures. I think it says 3 untapped white creatures, which is pretty cool. Otherwise, you'd be tapping your tapped guys to make more guys. If you tap a creature twice, is it just upside down then? I don't know. Food for thought. So we will play and immediately flash back the Battle Screech, making 4 flyers. We're just going to fly over the Gary here. We'll use a Windscarred Crag and a Great Furnace to bounce back an Omen of the Forge. I think if Joe... what could he produce here? There's a Witch's Cottage to get back the Monarch. I don't think the game's about that right now. I think the game's about the 6 power of flyers plus the shock. Yeah. All right, we'll move on to game 3 then. These games have all been decided by who controls the Monarch for the longest period of time. So Joe will be on the play. He opens with a Swamp, Bazooka Bog, Choking Sand, Sign in Blood, Oubliette, Grey Merchant, and Chittering Rats. The Chittering Rats goes to the bottom. I will be on the draw with an Omen of the Sun, Prophetic Prism, Glinthawk, Ancient Den, Radiant Fountain, Great Furnace, and Kabira Crossroads. I'm keeping on 7, drawing, and I draw pretty much the perfect spell. It says deal some damage to something. That's pretty much what I was looking for with this hand. I have the Omen of the Sun. It can generate pseudo card advantage through life and being able to protect creatures by generating food for edict effects. Joe will lead on a Swamp. I will lead on a Kabira Crossroads. Joe will play a second Swamp for a second turn and cast a Sign in Blood, undoing his mulligan immediately, which is awesome. There's a Prophetic Prism, and both decks are largely doing what they each want to do. We're both. Joe is playing lands with skulls on them and leveraging his life total to reinforce the amount of cards that he has and messing with the number of cards that I have with Chittering Rats. I am playing lands that gain me life and casting permanents that have the text draw a card on them somewhere. Great Furnace is the land for turn. So I'm up to 2 artifacts here. And instead of just G-blasting the dude on the other side, I will do one of the standard plays in this deck, which is run out a Glinthawk. Turn 1, nothing. Turn 2, Prophetic Prism. Turn 3, Glinthawk, bounce the Prism, play a third land, play the Prism again. So you kind of just generate, a free 2/2 there. So that free 2/2, easy for me to say, huh? That free 2/2 gets oublietted, captured in an oubliette. It falls in an oubliette. It's in a pit of despair. And Joe cracks in for 2 with his rat. For my 4th turn, I will play an Ancient Den and pass the turn. Yeah, both decks are largely doing what they want to do here. So we could have an Omen of the Sun or Forge to handle the 2/2. Our graveyard gets bogged. Cracking in for 2 here. And we'll let it in. I'd be surprised if we didn't have. There we go. We're going to fight back here. We'll make an Omen of the Sun in the end step. Gain some life, make some guys, start racing back and forth here. If the game is a straight race, the burn spells and the life gain make a big difference in favor of the Boros deck. So I have my 2 tokens. Joe has a pile of mana up. I will make a Prophetic Prism, draw a card. There's a Seeker of the Way in my hand. If I can connect with that card even once after it's triggered, it really generates such a swing in life total that I might be crafting a game plan around making that work. Running it out here means that that's not what I'm doing, because I'm very, oh wow, geez. It's very rare that there's 4 mana on the other side of the table, and from the mono black control player, and there's not an end step kill spell. There's an oubliette though. Okay, so there's 2 pits of despair, or is it pit of despairs because they're proper nouns? I think it's pit of despairs. Sounds weird. Chainer's Edict, get rid of one of my tokens. Kind of half a card for half a card there. The Chainer's Edict has flashback for like 75 mana or something. So between 75 and 1,000,000 mana it is to flash that card back. But you can do it. It can be done. So here's a Glinthawk out of me. Bouncing a Prophetic Prism, replaying the Prophetic Prism, and ripping a land off the top. There's a tapped Windsguard Crag, and we'll turn our dude sideways. Yeah, I really think Omen of the Forge is one of those cards, or Omen of the Sun is one of those cards that probably doesn't see enough play. But I don't know where it could see play outside of a core Skyfisher deck. I haven't really looked at Pauper outside of these games that we played in mid-November. So end step there, after my hand gets chittering rats, I'll bolt the rat. I'll run back the Glinthawk play with Prophetic Prism. I'll filter my Great Furnaces red through the Prophetic Prism to make white, to make a Thraben Inspector. And this is one of my favorite things about this deck. Like you just get to perform so many game actions. And none of them are particularly, great or broken or critical to whatever. But ooh, there's a Gray Merchant right there. That's awesome. That's 6 devotion. I'm down to 15. I think Joe's winning. I think Joe's up at 18. I mean, obviously the battlefield tells a different story, but using all of your mana to perform a bevy of game actions and also have cards in your hand. That's one of my favorite things about this deck. That's probably my actual favorite thing about this deck. Excuse me. There's another Seeker of the Way. Kraken with the team here for 6. There's a Witches. That's not going to be enough. And a Rager. That's not going to be enough. Yep, a Defile to kill the Seeker. And Joe correctly recognizes that that's probably the most problematic in a long game. But I think I just would have killed a Glinthawk with the Witches on the battlefield now to block. With the Witches and the Rager. We'll start off with a Crossroads tapped. Oh, I'm sorry. We'll start off by tapping our Crossroads to play Glinthawk to replay a Prophetic Prism again. Stop me if you've heard this one before. So we will just get in the air for 4. It looks like it's a 3-turn clock. We'll go to our end step here. Joe's going to pick them up. Yeah, and we have Bolt and Galvanic Blast. Yeah, I really love this deck. Well, hey, thanks for watching. Check out some more videos, and we'll see you next time.